Back to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small.
And I'm Paul Ogden. Jeff Cox is here. Frequent guest is to my right.
And,
as always.
And ironically, to my left, as our guest.
Whoa!
To my left. Candidate for the United States Senate, Andy Horning, running from the Libertarian Party. Welcome, Andy. Once again, you've been in the news the last couple of days because I graduated from DePauw University, and DePauw's poll shows that in this race, you're polling 7%.
Which, for a statewide race, I've never done that, obviously. So this is good news for me. Of course, the issue then becomes, how much Tea Party people hate me because I'm stealing votes away from their candidate.
And just a second, before we go further, what's contact information as far as going to your website?
Horningforsenate.com. It's F-O-R, Senate. So horningforsenate.com. And it's H-O-R-N-I-N-G, F-O-R-S-C-N-A-T-E. And then 812-585-0504 is my cell number, which I always give out because I figure it's safe. Nobody ever wants to talk to a politician. So, you can contact me all kinds of ways. I wish you would, because if you don't have questions these days, there's something wrong with you.
So DePauw did a poll?
DePauw University sponsored a poll. Apparently they're doing that now. And the poll showed that Richard Murdoch was trailing.
And Mark likes to mispronounce that name.
It's Mordor.
I've never understood that.
But you never saw Lord of the Rings. So Donnelly was ahead by 2 points. And Donnelly, I saw a commercial or an interview with him where he made a point. He said, I'm like the fourth most conservative member of the House of Representatives. It's like there's no distinction between the two major parties. I mean,
tell us the
I think there is. Well, follow the money. And if you look to see where the money comes from, ultimately speaking, that's where you should be wondering, why are they investing in these candidates? Just putting it down in brute, simple terms. If you check out your bill statement, whatever your credit card every month, you can see what you bought. If you look at campaign finance reports, you can see what has been bought. And if you see who's doing the buying, you should be thinking, what are we doing in the voting booth to keep voting for the same status quo? We've got the same bankers, you've got the same Goldman Sachs guys, you've got the same military industrialists. And look back a little bit. Our founders, all the wisest ones, and a dozen presidents, the presidents of the United States who had the keys to the power, they had all of this, they had the cushy job, they warned us. And it was people like, even like Kennedy and Wilson, and of course Eisenhower and his famous military-industrial complex thing. But right from the very beginning, George Washington warned us about the undue influence of the military in civil society, the undue influence of bankers once you give them the power over our monetary system. If you let people determine what the dollars are that you're using, the exchange units of your labor, and if you give them the power to start, making a standing army that's always, professional, permanent, global, armed force that is, looking to protect our contracts and other interests all over the world, you've made a big, classic, ancient mistake.
But how does the libertarian limit the involvement of these entities in politics?
First of all, let's get something straight here. Elections are never about candidates. Never.
we're kind of in Indianapolis. They're about which law firm?
No, you were right, and that the decision makers, however, are not the law firms; they're voters. And what has been
spelling tastes great.
Well, and unfortunately, it's not even that kind of thinking. The bumper sticker, sloganeering, if you can't say it in 30 seconds, you're not going to get it out. You're not going to be able to articulate any kind of serious legal or moral or pragmatic discussion in politics if it doesn't fit on a little pin that big. Mm-hmm. And we vote that way. And when you're looking at where the money has been coming from and what has been purchased, and the difference between Democrats and Republicans always coming down to just tiny percentages that, okay, we all agree that the military industrialists are going to get a huge amount of money. The bankers are going to be able to determine what our money is. They own our money. Those are givens. So the status quo is essentially, first of all, we take care of the guys that fund the campaigns. So, first of all, everybody has to give up, a huge percentage of their income. In fact, for the next several generations, we've sold the future out pretty well to the bankers and the military industrialists. So that's the given. What happens after that, you can discuss any kind of percentages here and there you want, because it doesn't matter to those guys. And to those guys who are in charge, and let's be real clear on this, if you vote for any Democrat or Republican, even Ron Paul, I love that guy, but if he runs as a Republican and you vote for Ron Paul and he becomes president, then the guys in charge will still be the guys in charge. That's just the way it is, because the voters will not have said what is necessary to be said. The only thing that, we could really do different in the voting booth these days is vote against the status quo. And if you vote against the status quo, basically you're saying this whole moneyed system of purchased elections, where you guys get first dibs on everything, where you get to decide what the money, unit is, and this petrodollar scheme that's been perpetrated on us since, since Nixon. If we vote against that, that would be an unmistakable shift in the direction of this country. Then we can talk about ideology. Then we can talk about stuff like socialism versus libertarianism, because right now we've got a crime syndicate that's running everything.
A couple of things. One, we did some shows on alternative parties, and after one of the segments I said, it seems to me that if you really want ideological variety in a two-party system, it'd be the libertarians against the Greens.
Absolutely, at least until we sell out. So, and I'm not looking for that alternative. I mean, it's not that it wouldn't happen eventually. Voters have to be keen to this. There is no procedural fix for bad decisions. We can't do anything to fix the fact that we have been voting badly. And it's not just because of the political parties, but the political parties have become entrenched and they are corrupt, and they do need to be removed if we're really going to talk about ideological issues in any kind of way that makes sense.
A second part of a question that I have is, what do you think about Citizens United as a decision and what it did?
Well, anything where, this is what I mean by procedural fix for bad decisions. You can't say that, you can take the money out of politics without finding some other, as long as we're going to vote for money, politicians will find a way to get the money out. So you see the growth of super PACs and you can't fix by law or procedure or by making a statement from some high decree that we are now going to police ourselves better. No, voters have to do this. Voters have to be in charge. Voters do make the decisions. There is nothing you can do to take away the accountability from voters. Now, the most natural thing in the world is for people to deny accountability for their choices. If you, on every election cycle, I've heard this, where parents will say, the public school system is awful, except the one I send the school I send my little Billy to is great. His teachers are wonderful, but all those other teachers, oh my gosh, our school system is terrible. You don't want to admit, if you send your son or daughter off to battle and they die, for God's sake, you don't want to think that this was, wasted. We have to, surely, this was for a good cause, and we have to go after these people that did this to us. And whatever we've been doing, we have to do it harder now. And so you don't want to admit that perhaps this was a mistake. Your decisions, whatever you did to lead up to this point, you've made some mistakes, and you're accountable for it. We don't want to admit that. So I get that. I understand that's a big motivator in this, fear and loathing thing where, where voters, Republicans are saying, you can't let the Democrats take this. The Democrats say, you can't, whatever you do, you might not like our guy, but you can't let the Republicans take it.
I know you believe in a much more limited federal government. What kind of things should the federal government be doing and not doing?
Well,
what kind of things are they doing now that they shouldn't be doing? Maybe I should phrase it.
These days I'm trying not to be quite as ideological. I think anybody who's followed me at all knows what my ideology is. But just on a more pragmatic level, I want to have rule of law under existing state and federal constitutions as written. Now, if we don't like the way they're written, we can rewrite them. But I want to go legit. What we're doing right now is totally lawless. I think everybody knows that you can purchase, whatever you want. If you got enough money, whatever the law says doesn't mean that much. And you can always find a way around anything. That's what so many of these K Street lobbyists are about. Whatever the tax law says doesn't really matter, because if you got enough money, you can find a lobbyist who can tweak the tax code, and we could find some way to adjust this.
But isn't that what any constituent does, though? Isn't in terms of a lobbyist, these K Street lobbyists, most of the voters don't have the time or the education or the location in Washington to be able to contact their congressman and talk to them constantly. Whatever issue, whatever position a person takes on an issue, there is a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. that is promoting that issue.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
But not but they're doing it in an abnormally in an abnormal ratio to what people actually believe in the society. Just because there's a lobbyist there and there's somebody here in this city who believes that sugar should be subsidized doesn't mean that therefore there should be several $100,000 contributed to a congressperson there.
But isn't that freedom of speech? That they have the right to express an opinion?
Let's back up, because the issue I just brought up is, do we have laws or not? And what we have kind of been going around here is that the laws don't matter because we just have people lobby, and this will do what we can. Now, if you get to that point, then you've got something like a majority rule, where whoever you got 10 white guys, 1 black guy, you got a rope, you got a tree. Let's take a vote. What's going to happen next? Is that what you want? I don't think so. I think we want to have something. I think that's a major stretch.
Not
No, not where we have
the
land of the free has the world's highest percentage of citizens in prison. We have not had a year's peace since the war to end all wars. We are trillions of dollars in debt, and our kids are going to have to pay for our present way of life. We are in such an extreme circumstance that I'm finding it hard to imagine anything that we can, any sort of scenario I can imagine with ropes and hanging people is not as extreme as the sort of death and mayhem scenario we're setting up for ourselves right now.
I'm not certain that having the highest percentage of people incarcerated is necessarily a bad thing if they're committing crimes.
Well, wait a second. If you're creating classes of conduct and saying those are criminal, and they're not inherently or intrinsically malum per se. In other words, wrong in themselves.
Right.
Okay, we're going to put you in prison because you smoke marijuana, because that's convenient for us because we can make money off of people being in prison, and so that's a class of crime we've just
No, I disagree. I mean, no, I agree with you. I disagree with the prohibition on drugs. I disagree with the criminalization on drugs wholeheartedly. But
most of the people in prison.
Well, yeah, but it's at the expense of the people who are actually committing the crimes, like burglary, like car theft, like the things that actually hurt people.
If you legalize a lot of the crimes that are victimless crimes, then you'll find that, and those people aren't then kept out of society and functioning and getting jobs, etc., I think you'll find that the crime rate goes down.
Well, let's bring this down to a human scale here. If we're talking about what politicians do, they decide winners and losers more than just about anything else. They take your money and they decide who gets it. So anytime you say that we're going to do something, let's take a really good example. There's a drug study that the government is going to put on, and we're going to spend lots of whatever it takes, because this drug is going to prevent something really bad, whatever that is. So it's going to be some good end we want to achieve with government, and we're going to use lots of money. What we don't ever see is what is the human cost? How many people have to lose their homes for this? How many people have to lose their jobs to do this? Do we have to wage another war because, there's some kind of contractual issues or something like that, or we need to obtain this drug from something that can only be taken from this rainforest, and sorry for you guys. There's a cost to everything government does. Do we ever calculate that? And have we tried to calculate the cost of our global, nation building and, picking winners and losing at that kind of scale?
And Andy, I'm sorry to cut you off. We're at the end of this segment. It's been fun. It's been very interesting having you on. Wish you the best of luck in the campaign.
I need divine intervention if you can arrange that too.
I'm an atheist. I'm a bad one to talk to about that. This has been a fun show today. I'm Mark Small. That's Paul Ogden.
Take care.
We'll see you next week on Civil Discourse Now, and our audience has been here today. Take care. Paul, as always, it's a pleasure.